is to introduce measures which delay that peak arriving and which push it down below the capacity of the health system. In response to the argument, but hang on a second, look at what they're doing in Wuhan, look at what they're doing in Taiwan, look at what they're doing in Singapore, look at what they're doing in South Korea. The entire assumption in Whitehall was, first of all, that won't work for them, and they will all have second peaks later on. Secondly, it's inconceivable that the British public are going to accept Wuhan-style measures here. Even if we therefore suppress it completely, all that you're going to do is get a second peak in the winter when the NHS is already every year under pressure. So we only actually have a real choice between one peak and herd immunity by September, terrible, but then you're through it by the time the next winter comes. If you try and flatten it now, this second peak comes up in wintertime. That's even worse than the summer. So horrific as the numbers look in the summer, the numbers will be even worse if this happens in October, November, December time. So it's important to bear in mind this on this whole herd immunity point. Obviously, no one is saying that they want this to happen. The point is it was seen as an inevitability. You will either have herd immunity by September after a single peak, or you will have herd immunity by January with a second peak. Those are the only two options that we have. That was the whole logic of all of the discussions in January and February and early March. And that's why in the week of the 9th, people from SAGE and elsewhere in the government started to talk publicly about herd immunity. It's not that people are thinking this is a good thing and we actively want it. It's that it's a complete inevitability. The only real question is one of timing. It's either herd immunity by September or it's herd immunity by January after a second peak. That was the assumption up until Friday the 13th of March.
So when Matt Hancock said on the 15th of March, we have a plan, herd immunity is not part of it, was that wrong?
Yes, and saying it's not part of it is completely wrong. And I think there's a sort of semantic problem now that, and I look back through all of our WhatsApps between me and the Prime Minister and Hancock and Chris Vallance and whatnot. Essentially, there's a sort of semantic question about, is the goal herd immunity? Do we want herd immunity? Versus, is that the basic plan? Of course, no one wants this to happen. No one wanted any of it to happen.